It is so hard to lose someone you love, a hero to many. The village of Freeport remembers the life of Dr. Dale Anthony Edmonston, brother-in-law to Freeport Mayor Andrew Hardwick, and brother of Freeport's First Lady Cherie Edmonston. Dr. Edmonston was a friend of Freeport, somebody who worked quietly behind the scenes, but also proudly in public to make life better for others. But Dr. Dale's reach also moved far beyond the Freeport borders as an advocate and friend of people living with HIV and AIDS. Dr. Edmonston, a Long Island hero, touched people around the world. He died New Year's Day, ending his 27-year personal battle with AIDS at the age of 48. He is remembered for sounding the trumpet to save lives and offer hope to people infected and affected by this pandemic. Dale Anthony advised Presidents Clinton and Bush, addressed international heads of state, and worked with local, state, and national politicians, celebrities, and grassroots leaders to make a difference through education, advocacy, and direct action against the stigma, devastation, and loneliness of living with HIV/AIDS. Affectionately titled Long Island's AIDS Ambassador, the Long Island native pushed for comprehensive national health policy and international HIV/AIDS protocols, including treatment, research, funding, and prevention. He challenged global leaders to end needless suffering of people living with the virus worldwide. Dr. Edmonston reached and helped millions via workshops, presentations, his national hotline, and goodwill tours. He launched Tough Talk Media in 1986. Now, without any publicity or fanfare, Dale personally created safe houses and food pantries for those with HIV/AIDS, making sure individuals, especially children with the illness, had shelter, food, and Christmas gifts. Thousands benefited from his kindness without even knowing where it was coming from. He opened the first Dale House Resource Center in 2000 to increase his capacity to bring hope and help to people living with AIDS. When first diagnosed with HIV, the doctor told him he would not last through a year. Well, Dale spent the next 27 years living life to the fullest and committed to serving people who are living with AIDS/HIV like himself. He spent his life fighting to end ignorance and discrimination against people living with AIDS. In 2004, he agreed to enlighten others by telling his story. Take a Look Through My Eyes is the remarkable story of his battle with HIV/AIDS infection, humanizing the experience of living with AIDS. This book traces the early days of his diagnosis, depression, secrecy, denial, treatment, prejudice, and ridicule. Dale Anthony, with the unfailing love and support from his mother and his sister, Freeport's First Lady, decided that he would rather live with dignity than die with shame, and started the work that raised him from obscurity into the national spotlight. Through him, AIDS victims were given a voice, as well as a source of inspiration and hope. Hear now from Dale, in his own words, from a speech some years ago.
I'm here to sound the trumpet about this deadly disease called AIDS, so that you, my brother and sister, will know what to do to save your life and anyone that you're willing to share the information with. What's not important is where AIDS came from. What's not important is how a person got HIV. What is important is that the numbers are going up and they're not going down. And if we don't begin to educate each other, young and old, about this dreadful disease, then we're going to lose the heart and soul of our community and communities like ours all across the country. So I urge you to listen carefully as I sound the trumpet. My name is Dale Anthony, and I am one of the many faces of AIDS. I put a face to AIDS for 3 reasons. One is because when I say those words, people say, wow, that brother's got that awful disease that I hear them talk about. He don't look like it. And that's just it. You can't tell by looking at a person if they're HIV positive or not. So if you must have sex, you've got to protect yourself every time. The second reason why I put a face to AIDS for you is because when a person is diagnosed HIV positive, it doesn't only affect them, it affects their family, their friends, and anyone they come in contact with. And the third and most important reason why I put a face to AIDS is because This is an awful thing, my brothers and sisters, and I don't want any more of my brothers and sisters of any color to have to go through what I've been going through. And so, I'm 45 years old and 24 years living with the HIV virus. It's only by the grace of God, the love and support of my family, and being a doctor for myself. And this is my story. I was in the hospital with a bout with ulcers, and during the time when I was in the hospital, the doctor said, "Dale, I think you need to take an HIV test." And I said, "Okay." I didn't think it reflected me. And, I thought I was an educated man, but I guess I wasn't as educated as I thought I was, because I went out and I had unprotected sex, which allowed me to contract the HIV virus. I worked for the airlines for like 15 years. I've traveled every place in the world I ever wanted to go. Paris, London, Milan, West Coast. And I was the life of the party. And certainly if I could turn back time, I would do things differently. I'll never forget that day. It was the most devastating day of my entire life. I was home making some breakfast, and all of my family had gone to business. And so the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and on the other end was my doctor. And he said, "Dale?" I said, "Yes." He said, "This is Dr. So-and-so. I got your HIV results back, and you're HIV positive, and you better get help from a doctor who deals with those kind of people, because I don't." And he hung up the phone. And all I could do was just cry and cry. I didn't know much about HIV then. I thought I could die the next day. And then as I started to get myself together, I resolved with myself that I wasn't going to tell anybody, because I heard that when folks were diagnosed, their families would turn their backs and kick them out and wouldn't want to have anything to do with them. And I thought that this could possibly be me. And so, later that afternoon, I was still in the kitchen crying when my mother and my sister arrived home. I'll never forget, my mother was standing in front of me and my sister was standing on the other side. And my mother said to me, "Dale, what's the matter with you? I know something's the matter because your eyes are all red and your face is puffy." And I didn't want to tell my mother, but I told her in a quiet tone. I said, "Mommy, I'm HIV positive." And my mother fell down on the floor and she was kicking and screaming. And she said, "Oh no, not my baby, what am I going to do?" And my sister ran into the living room where there was a big bay window. And she was banging on that window so hard, I thought she was going to break it. And she said, "Oh no, not my little brother, there's not a cure for AIDS." But we made it through that night with their love and their support and prayer and the support of my 4 older brothers and my father. But I tell you, my brothers and sisters, in that first year of being diagnosed, it wasn't easy. And then we realized that, and I realized that, no matter what you're going through, the only person that can get you through is God. And so it was rough for me in that first year. I went through a lot. I suffered neuropathy, which is an all-over body ache. My hands, my feet, my arms just throb, and there's nothing to relieve the pain. I have headaches that last from 7 to 12 days, and there's nothing to relieve the pain. Sometimes my eyes ache like toothache, and there's nothing to relieve the pain. I have the honor of having a rare form of cancer that comes along with being HIV positive, called KS. And many people that get this get it in like lesion forms. But from my waist to my knees, I have it in cyst form. About the size of a quarter. They're about 30. And every so often one will become active and I'll have to have radiation. And if the cancer doesn't respond to the radiation, I'll have to go on to chemo. This is an awful thing, my brothers and sisters, that you wouldn't want to have to go through, or anyone that you know or love. One evening when I was bedridden, like so many evenings I still am today, I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when everybody went out, they went out to dinner, I got up and I put on my best pajamas and I got a whole bunch of pills and a bottle of Bacardi, and I wrote a note to that effect. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when they came back, they found me laying on the floor unconscious. I was in a coma for 7 days. And on the 7th day, the doctor said to my mother, well, we might as well pull the plug because he's not coming back. And she agreed, and all of my family rallied from all around the country because they were going to pull the plug on me. And they took the respirator out of my mouth, and they were preparing to take off all of the other stuff. And my sister said to the doctor, my sister is my best friend, and she said to the doctor, Doctor, you think you can hear me? And the doctor said, I don't know. And so she went over onto the side of my bed, and she said, Dale, you gotta get up. You gotta get up. There's a sale at Macy's, and I know you want to go. And I woke up and said, okay, let's go. And it was a miracle. And everybody was screaming and praising the Lord. And I sat there and I watched them jump, and they were so happy. But I tell you, my brothers and sisters, I wasn't very happy about coming back because I still had to deal with the stigma, the shame, the embarrassment that comes along with this disease. People don't know that you can't catch this disease by shaking my hand or giving me a hug or talking to me, because unless you've got the cure for this disease in your pocket, that's all you can do for me or anyone else that's living with this disease. There is hope because of the new medications that's out there. They're allowing people to live a little bit longer in hopes that they'll be here in time for the cure. But these medications are very toxic. The side effects are great, and there are thousands that are dying from this medication. And I always relate this portion of my story to a song that my grandmother always sang. Somebody prayed for me. And as a last resort, I still wasn't doing well. My mother called over a minister who she knew I frequent his church, Bishop Raymond Mackey from the Tabernacle of Joy in New York, New York. And he came over on a Saturday night with 4 of his deacons, and they surrounded my bed and kneeled on the floor, and they prayed for me. And I tell you, I was respectful because of who they were, but I really wasn't trying to hear it. And then all of a sudden, after a couple of hours, about 4 hours, Bishop got up and he said to me, Dale, you better get used to this HIV thing because God's got work for you to do. And he went on out the door. And I said, okay, Bishop, thank you, see you, bye. Because I really was in a lot of pain and I just didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to go on. And so I tell you, my brothers and sisters, the next morning was Sunday morning. And as weak and as tired as I was, I got up and I got dressed and I went to church. And to God be the glory, I've been up and in the war against AIDS ever since. And after learning to deal with my diagnosis, I lost my best friend and his wife. I watched them fall in love, get married. I was the best man, the godfather of their child, and I buried them both. And they went out kicking and screaming. They looked like the starving kids from Africa videos that we've all seen. And as I began to deal with my own diagnosis and the loss of my best friend and his wife, I realized, I looked around me and I saw that there were so many others that were less fortunate than myself and that were living with this disease. And I began to advocate for those like myself living with AIDS. I realized, and I've gone through a lot of pain and suffering, but what an awesome thing to do something to help somebody else along this journey called life. What a wonderful feeling to be able to know that someone got some food on the table or their medication or they got housing on today because of something that I did or something that you can do. We've got to work while it's day because night soon comes. And we're all going to have to answer to God one day. And I don't know about you, but one of these days, I'm hoping that God will give me an old pair of crooked wings, a crown with a couple of jewels in it, and a key to one of the many mansions, one of the many rooms in his mansion. And so we've got to do what he would want us to do. And, you know, I don't tell you my story to feel sorry for me. I tell you my story in hopes to save your life and to make you realize the importance of what we're all here for. I thank God for all that I've gone through because it's given me time to get my house in order. And so whatever happens today, tomorrow, the next minute, I know that everything is going to be all right because he promised that he is going to prepare a place for me and for you. Certainly that minister was right. God had a lot of work for me to do and still does. Who would have ever thought I would have been on BET, CNN, sounding the trumpet as I'm known for? Who would have ever thought I would establish Tough Talk Media, radio show and cable show, and the Dale House Community Resource Center for children and families infected and affected by HIV and AIDS? Who would have ever thought that I would have been sitting back in the White House, kicking it with the Vice President, receiving a special appointment? My goodness, I certainly have a lot of work to do, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. I need you to share my story with someone else and ask them to share it with someone else, and so on, so we can stop the spread of this dreadful disease. I don't know whether I'll ever see you again on this side, but I know that I'll see you on the other side if you're working for the Lord. But I want you to remember this. It comes from the Bible in 1 Corinthians 14:8. In a paraphrase, it says, if the trumpet doesn't sound clearly, the people won't know what to do. So I urge you to hear me, Dale Anthony, loud and clear as I sound the trumpet. There's a dreadful disease called AIDS out there that will kill you. So protect yourself, love yourself, respect yourself. And it's time for us to draw the curtains back and lift the blinds and let God's light shine in, which is love. God bless you and God keep you until we meet again.
Sadly, Dr. Edmonston succumbed to his illness January 1st, 2012. He was 48. Funeral services are Sunday, January 8th, 2012, at Zion Cathedral Church of God in Christ, 312 Grand Avenue in Freeport, New York, 11520, starting at 7 p.m. Viewing starts at 4. His interment is January 9th, 10 a.m., leaving from Zion Cathedral Church of God in Christ, going to Greenfield Cemetery in Uniondale. Dr. Dale Anthony Edmonston will forever be remembered, loved, and missed.